Chapter 35. A Choice. The bell above the cafe door rang. Allie walked into Barry's cafe looking around for Walter. Just as before, he was late. She took a seat at the same table looking out the cafe window for her English, sweater-wearing friend. She wore a pair of shorts with a white top and a pair of gray stockings. She usually wouldn't wear such an outfit to a meeting, but now she felt out of place not wearing her favorite combination of clothing. All that was missing was the pair of goggles worn around her neck or over her head. Sitting next to her was a young woman, a college student, judging by her stack of textbooks. She sat reading a book to herself. The title of the book read, "The Tyrant of Ancient Greece, the Story of Alexander the Great." Allie snickered, shaking her head. She felt like she knew more than any college book she had ever read. Alexander, the kind gentleman from the balcony looking out across Babylon in the warm night air, was far from a tyrant. He'd shown her hospitality she'd never expected from anyone. He had lost all he held dear and wanted nothing more than to be remembered as a humble and honorable leader. The only moment she had ever heard him raise his voice was at his own generals, who had all but turned their backs on him.
A gift for your kind words and trust. May the links remind you that bravery must never be chained by our fears, as we both have allowed to happen in the past.
She considered saying something, but hesitated, knowing the woman would never believe her. For all Allie knew, even the clear memory of Alexander's time with her was all but a dream.
What can I get you?
Asked the waitress as she stood at Allie's table holding a pen and notepad. Allie looked at the waitress and noticed the small yellow flower at the end of her pen, one similar to the yellow flower petals Emily used to aid Chris's father and the Count of Lyon. The vivid, lingering, foul smell of death in Lyon filled her nose, or so she imagined. She remembered Chris and his dreadful expression when he walked out of his hovel following his father's death.
I suppose it makes sense you two are not angels.
How so?
Angels don't speak English. They speak French.
Miss?
Asked the waitress. Allie's attention snapped back to the waitress.
Sorry, I'll have a cup of tea, please.
Allie asked, wishing nothing more than to drink the same soothing cup of tea Mason had offered her in the midst of his basement shelter.
Is English breakfast okay?
Alison, would you mind if I told you what I think? If you came searching for him, I think you've cared about him longer than you've known.
Perfect. Thank you.
Allie looked back to the cafe window, watching for Walter, only to see nothing except unfamiliar faces wandering up and down the streets. Everyone wore the same trends of modern fashion, vastly different from the streets of Asphodel's Alpha District, packed with people dressed in their period clothes. Two police officers wearing sunglasses passed by talking to each other. Allie immediately remembered the police androids of New York, their rounded curves and sleek metal designs, shadowed by their piercing, color-changing eyes. She missed Teach, Zip, Twig, and even Kyle, the strangest bunch of hooligans she had ever met, but also the friendliest. She laughed at the memory of Marcus falling into the fountain and the motley group sharing a laugh together at his misfortune. She snickered, remembering Sim's less than innocent face.
You know, I never thought seeing that man's humiliation would bring me this much joy.
Now, as a gesture of gratitude to our new heroes, why don't you guys come hang with us and we'll celebrate? Think of it as our way of repaying the debt Kyle now owes you to.
The bell over the cafe door rang. Allie looked over to see Walter walk into the cafe. He closed the door behind him with his free hand and walked over to her with a friendly smile. Allie slid her chair back to greet him, but he shook his head.
No, you stay right there. I heard all about your accident the other day.
Walter walked over and shook Allie's hand as she remained in her seat.
How are you feeling?
Walter asked, putting his briefcase down on the floor and hanging his coat up on the back of the chair across the table from her.
I'm fine. Thanks for asking.
Replied Allie.
Oh, glad to hear it. I'm amazed you still agreed to meet with me after all that's happened. Are you sure you're okay?
I'm okay. Just a few bumps and bruises, mostly, but nothing to worry about. The hospital said the bus must have just barely missed me.
Well, thank God for that.
Replied Walter. The waitress came over to their table.
Walter, right? English breakfast? I remember you in that sweater vest from the other day, when you came in with your friends.
She asked, guessing Walter's order.
Yes, and thank you.
Walter replied. The waitress turned and walked away with a head nod.
So, I'm assuming you're here to learn more about that opportunity I told you about.
Allie took a deep breath.
I was at first, but then something's kind of come up, and now I feel like I'm rather comfortable with where I'm at.
Really? What brought you to such a change of heart? You seemed rather sure of yourself last time we spoke.
Allie waited for the waitress to place her tea on the table.
Can we add one more chair to the table, please?
Walter asked the waitress. Allie stared down at her tea, thinking back on everything that had happened to her. In her short time in Asphodel, she'd had more adventures than she ever could have hoped for in one lifetime. Now the memories brought nothing but a feeling of loss and sadness. She drank a sip of her tea and continued to speak. Allie stirred her tea, staring down at her cup.
I guess I just discovered a life of adventure wasn't what I had expected. Being with my friends and family here doesn't sound like such a bad thing anymore.
I see,
replied Walter as the waitress dropped the chair off next to the table.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. My colleague was really looking forward to speaking with you today.
The waitress came back over to the table and placed another cup of tea down in front of Walter.
I expect he'll be here any minute now,
replied Walter.
Sorry to have changed my mind on you so suddenly.
No. It's quite all right. I understand. Life is a mysterious thing. One minute we think we know ourselves, while the next, we are finding out we never really knew anything about ourselves to begin with.
Yeah, you can say that again,
replied Allie. Walter looked up at her as he sipped his tea. She looked back at him as they both chuckled. Allie took another drink as he spoke.
I won't bother to repeat myself this time.
The doorbell to the cafe chimed as the door opened. Walter turned around to see who was entering.
Speak of the devil.
Walter stood up from his chair. Allie set her teacup back down and looked towards the cafe door. She froze. It was the same man who had followed her the night of her accident. He wore the same blue baseball cap, jacket, and sunglasses from before, with the hat bent low so she couldn't see his face. Allie grabbed hold of the table with her hands shaking. She readied herself to run for her life. Walter shifted seats so the man could sit down across from Allie. The man took his seat. Allie let go of the chair, feeling ready to face her fears, just as before. She looked at the man with a new spring of bravery. The man removed his hat and placed it down on the table. He ran his hand through his long gray hair and scratched at his beard. Allie felt her heart skip a beat, seeing the face behind the sunglasses as he set them down on the table.
Allie, I'd like you to meet Erland,
said Walter.
Hey, kiddo. Sorry I'm late. Had to see two friends off before I came. How have you been?
Said Erland, grinning at her with his pale blue eyes. Allie could hardly speak. Her eyes could see him, but she couldn't believe it. She wasn't crazy.
What? Well, what are you doing here?
Asked Allie.
I could ask you the same question,
said Erland, grabbing Walter's tea and taking a sip. Walter looked at him with a conflicted expression.
No, please. Help yourself.
Thanks,
replied Erland, taking another sip.
No, I mean, how did you get here?
Allie said. Erland placed the teacup back down on the plate and rubbed his hands together.
Sam didn't tell you before he left, did he? I thought I'd raised him better than that. Well, I guess I'm not much better.
Allie shook her head with her mouth hanging open. She had no idea how to respond or what to make of the moment.
The Ark and I are bound together. Wherever it goes, I go. Well, and as a result, I'm placed into the timeline of each world like another piece of the puzzle. And, as such, I know what's going to happen, and what has happened.
Wait, so it was you following me that day?
Yes.
Why didn't you say something?
Not like you'd believe me. You didn't know me then. You probably thought I was some weirdo following you around about the town. Am I right?
Well, yeah, but you could have introduced yourself.
I wasn't exactly sure what to say, and talking's not my style. I'm not very social, which I guess is why Sam isn't either. Aria was always the talkative one out of the three of us. It was her best quality, I'd say.
Allie's mind whirled with 100 different questions.
So why did you follow me?
To stop you from ever going to Asphodel, of course.
Replied Erland, stealing Walter's tea from his hand as he tried to take a drink. Walter rolled his eyes.
You followed me to stop me?
Tried to. My plan was to follow you on the day you left and see if there was a way to save you from falling into that hole between worlds that led you to Asphodel in the first place. If you never left, none of this would have happened. Sam would still be working with Otto, while the Alpha District would never have fallen into chaos and your life would have remained blissfully the same. I hoped I could prevent everything.
I went anyway, though,
said Allie, leaning forward.
Yes, unfortunately, in my effort to change the future, I just ended up becoming the reason it all happened in the first place. You were destined to go since the beginning.
So Sam does exist. Everything. Asphodel, Otto, Vila, Merrick, Leo, the Ark, all of it?
Yes. You're not crazy.
How did I get back here then? Sam said he never knew the way home.
I gave him away. That was not the right way. A way I discovered a long time ago. I just never told him about it until he came and found me. Problem was, that there was only one chance for one trip only. Afterwards, the Ark becomes useless. Disconnected to the worlds around it. Unusable, practically. If one were to use it now, I'd hate to find out what would happen.
Allie stared off into space, thinking of when Sim typed the numbers from the back of his photo into the computer.
He used the only way on me.
You and you alone. I do have to give him credit. He turned the tide on Otto rather quickly. With you out of the picture and the Ark orbit useless, Otto's plans went all down the drain.
Checkmate.
Walter chimed in. Allie sat back in her chair, trying to wrap her head around Sim's sacrifice. He had stranded everyone in Asphodel, all in an act to save her. She recalled the day she had come down the stairs, still filled with grief, and found Sim sitting in the living room, staring out the window. He had shown her around Asphodel for the first time that day, and made his promise to her, one that he had now kept.
Sam made his choice, Allie. Now it's time for you to make yours.
Walter leaned down and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a small silver and black device that he handed to Allie. The device resembled the same communicator she had kept with her on each of her adventures.
What is this?
Walter and I have been working on that one device for 15 years now. It's the only way to open the gateway from here. With it, it will reverse the link you and the Ark now share, sending you back,
said Erland.
Wasn't the simplest thing to make. We had 112 prototypes, all failures,
said Walter.
You said it was just for one trip.
Yeah, one trip for one person, both ways.
Allie raised an eyebrow in curiosity as Erland laughed.
I guess I really do need to clarify more often.
Erland has told me everything about you, Allie.
said Walter with a giddy expression.
When I first met him as an undergraduate, he told me stories about the young woman who traveled between worlds, saving people's lives. For the longest time, I just thought they were stories. But then he filled in the details behind them. It took him a long time to convince me he wasn't just pulling my chain. I didn't believe him until the day you and I met in person. I had to do my best to maintain a facade up until this very moment.
Lucky for us, Walter's quantum studies showed us the link we needed to connect to the Ark. The journey may be a little rough, like when you first left, though.
Allie shook her head. The conversation was beginning to pass over her head, but one thing in particular didn't seem to make any sense.
Whoa, wait. You've known Walter since undergraduate school?
Erland leaned toward her, ready to repeat himself.
I'm woven into your history. Just like I was in all the other worlds you and Sam visited together. Well, Walter and I go way back as friends in this world. I've spent much of my time working with him on this one communicator. One of my many lifetimes of work spent on just you.
I really look forward to seeing it used. A lifetime of work on a key to a locked door. All that was left was to find the right door, or person in this case,
said Walter.
How am I supposed to go back? The gateway doesn't exist anywhere. I've been to the site of my accident. There's no light from the Ark there. Nothing.
Erland sipped at Walter's tea again. He set his teacup down on the plate.
You are the gateway now, Allie. When you left, the Ark became bound to you. You're the gateway and forever will be. The Ark is broken and bound to you, and you alone now.
Allie looked at the communicator. She held it, wishing she could use it to speak to Sim at this very moment. Erland watched as she examined it.
He's in trouble, Ellie. I hoped to save him by stopping you from ever leaving from the start. But I failed. Now he needs you. Sim's made his choice, and now it's time for you to make yours.
Allie listened to Erland as she rotated the watch around in her hands. She thought of Sim's kiss the moment before she left. The kiss they had shared in the streets of London. The safety of his arms, holding her close. His eyes, like the earth and sky above. The sound of his voice, calm and collected. She longed to be with him again. It ached in her chest. Walter finally picked up his teacup and drank what little was left. Erland sat back in his chair, waiting for Allie's answer quietly. She placed the communicator down on the table.
No.
Erland raised an eyebrow at her response. Walter choked on his tea, setting the cup back down as he coughed.
Sam gave up everything for me to come home. It was all I ever wanted since the day I arrived. If I go back, I'd only undo everything he sacrificed. It would all be for nothing. He sent me home so I wouldn't get hurt. I can't go back.
Erland closed his eyes and bowed his head.
My family needs me here anyway. My dad's sick and my mom's going to need me close in case anything happens. I can't go back now.
Walter sighed, finally taking a heavy breath. Erland sighed the same sigh of disappointment.
I understand.
I've seen horizons far beyond my own imagination. I've met people I only dreamed of talking to face to face. And the one place I wanted to go since I got there from the start was home. I'm sorry.
Don't be, kiddo. The life of a guardian is hard. Sam and Arya had to be trained for years, and even then at times it got to them. It got to me especially. It's hard holding the life of an entire world in the palm of your hands, praying every moment that you'll succeed. It's a weight that I believe humans were never meant to carry.
Walter sighed.
Well, that's disappointing.
I guess you guys can have this back then,
said Allie, picking the watch up off the table and handing it to Erland. Erland pushed her hand back.
No, keep it. Think of it as a trinket to help you remember what really happened. so you'll never doubt yourself.
Thanks, Erland.
I'll admit I'm disappointed. But Walter did promise you the job of a lifetime, and I did pull some strings in case your choice didn't go as I'd hoped.
Erland pulled a folded envelope out of his jacket pocket and handed it to Allie. Allie opened the envelope, pulling out a plane ticket and a series of documents.
That's one plane ticket to New York. Upon your arrival, you'll be greeted by a representative from World Stories Press. Well, I dropped a few names, told them of your supposed adventures as a journalist, and they agreed to hire you. You fly out, after you visit your parents, of course.
Allie sat in disbelief. She smiled at Erland.
Thanks, Erland.
Erland stood up with a warm smile. Allie stood up and hugged him. Walter pushed back his chair and reached out to shake Allie's hand.
Until next time, Allie.
It was good seeing you again, Walter. And thank you for everything.
She replied.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure to meet the woman who has inspired me so much these past several years.
Erland grabbed his hat and sunglasses. He placed a $10 bill on the table for the waitress, slipping his hat back on his head. He gave Allie one last friendly smile.
Take care of yourself, kiddo.
Erland patted Walter on the shoulder as he collected his belongings. The two of them made their way out of the cafe, leaving Allie by herself. Allie sat back down in her chair, her hands cradling the communicator. She rubbed her fingers across it, thinking about her decision. She felt a saddened feeling tug at her. She placed the communicator down on the table in front of her. She picked up her tea and sipped at it as she stared at the plane ticket and the communicator in front of her. She looked away towards the cafe window. The same young couple she'd seen before was now sitting at a table outside. They both gazed at one another with the same passionate stare. The man waved his hands around, telling the woman a story. The woman laughed with a joyful smile. Allie felt a tear run down her cheek as her heart wept.
Hey everyone, this is JD Kelly, the voice of Walter Steele from Sem Adventures Across Time. If you've enjoyed your adventure across time so far, be sure to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/TS Wieland. With your support, you'll gain early access to the next chapter of the book, and even a copy of the book itself. With your contribution, more thrilling and inspiring audiobooks can be made every day through the hard work, time, and dedication of voice actors and artists all across the world, including myself, all working together. From all of us here in the world between worlds, we'd like to thank you for joining us on our adventures.